Okay. Hello and welcome to the Jolabokaflod podcast, where we celebrate stories that stay with you long after the final page. I'm your host, Christopher Norris, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by one of the most exciting voices in Nordic noir, Eva Björg Ægisdóttir. Um, Eva is an internationally best-selling author of the awards-winning Forbidden Iceland series. And her latest novel, Home Before Dark, is a haunting standalone thriller that's already earning critical acclaim for its atmospheric suspense, emotional depth, and unforgettable characters. She's been called the new queen of Icelandic crime fiction, and her work has been published in around 24 languages, at the current count, with more than 1 million copies sold worldwide. Ava, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay, so uh, let's start with your roots. Um, how did growing up in Akranes shape your storytelling voice?
I think probably in more ways than I realized. It's of course the setting for my Elma series. I think I kind of, when I started writing, it was kind of like writing what you know. It's like an advice you get a lot. So I was writing about Akranes and how it was growing up there, how it was like being a part of this small, this close-knit community, because it was actually very different when I was growing up than it is today. I think it has doubled in size. When I was growing
Right.
up, it was like 4,000 people, and I feel like in my series, I'm always writing about the Akranes I knew as a kid. And yeah, like I said, where there used to be farms and horses, now there's like houses. I think it's 8,000 or 9,000 people today.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I'm like very much shaped by Akranes and growing up there because I also feel like I've kind of noticed like after I got older and I started traveling more and went away, I was like I always wanted to be abroad. So I was like 17, 18. I was going as an au pair. I went to a Spanish school and lived on my own in Spain,
Right.
and it kind of make you realize how growing up in just Iceland is kind of like growing up in a bubble. It's
Yes. No,
yeah, I mean everyone is the same here. We don't even have a lot of diversity when it comes to income. Everyone is kind of like most people, at least like 20, 30 years ago, were white. It's like it's not a lot of diversity.
no, I
So
know. I read somewhere that the second largest place in Iceland is something like 18,000 people. So
yeah, exactly. So I think it has shaped a lot of who I am and how I write. But on the other hand, I'm kind of writing about that in my books also, like
yes,
being from that kind of a place. And
yes.
it's very interesting when you go outside of this bubble and realize like just how big the world is, you know?
I think it helps if you've been away and then come back, you have a different
Yeah.
perspective, don't you?
Definitely, and I feel like I've kind of, well, at least in my series, given those perspectives a voice through different characters.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
And you've often spoken about returning to Iceland after you studied in Norway. Was that a turning point in your decision to write crime fiction, or have you had a hankering for doing that for a long time?
I mean, no, I kind of, I think I went. I mean, I went to university here in Iceland, and then I went to study my master's degree in Norway. But I always had like that. I always wanted to write a book, and I knew that like very early on. So going to Norway, I just felt like I had to finish my studies. I kind of never saw it happening that I would become a full-time author. I mean, in Iceland, it's not very realistic, even though we do have a lot of authors. I think we have like
No,
uh,
I've met Isa. She's apparently a director of a chemical factory or something like that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think she would be able to quit her job and be a full-time author, but she can't. So
sure.
I think she has to be very busy because it's who she is. But I just thought that because like a huge book sales here in Iceland is like 3,000-4,000 copies, and
That's
you
right.
can't, yeah, you can't really live on it. I mean,
That's of course where the whole idea of Jolabokaflod comes from,
yeah, exactly.
because you can only buy a particular book that
Mhm.
Christmas, and then after that, you've lost your opportunity really because it's never going to get reprinted in the Icelandic language because there's so
No,
few people.
exactly. I mean, that's why we have like a fund for authors where they do get like something from the government, like but you have to kind of be a literary author to get it. So
Yes,
like not very common for crime authors. So we kind of have to rely on getting published outside of
yes.
Iceland, which
Well,
is kind of what happened.
well, exactly. You seem very successful at that. I mean, in fact, you've sold over 1 million copies of books, and
Yeah.
won some of the most prestigious awards in Nordic noir. So, do you remember the moment where you realised that this is really what I meant to do, what I'm meant to be doing?
I think it was like I think it actually doesn't have anything to do with success. I mean, of course, it's like amazing to get like that recognition and have that many people read your books. It's like unrealistic still, but I think it was just I think I actually have like a moment where I realized like, okay, this is something that comes very natural to me. And that was when I was 15 years old. I mean, I had always been like a huge bookworm. I was like at my local library in Iceland, in Akranes. I was kind of like a regular. I mean, I went there almost every day. I had like a special limit for books I was able to lend. I was allowed to take more books than the other kids. And I even got like a ride home with the ladies at the library in the evenings. So I was always like a huge reader. I read everything. I kind of felt like Matilda or something when I was little.
Yes,
But I actually, so when I started writing, I mean, I used to be always writing diaries and like short stories and stuff like that. But when I was like 15, there was like a short story competition in my town,
right.
and I decided to write a story. And I remember like sitting that evening by my computer and I started writing and I just couldn't stop. I was like, I went into this kind of like trance, like yeah, the story just came out and I thought like, okay, this is like very natural to me. It's like, it comes
Yeah.
very easily and I can definitely do this. So I think that was the moment I was like, I knew this was in me.
It's interesting because there's a statistic from somewhere that says that 1 in 10 people in Iceland writes a published book, which is pretty amazing. But
Yeah,
there must be something in the water or
the
something.
atmosphere and something in the water. So yes. No, I think there are a lot of different kind of like I think everyone is writing like some kind of not fiction, but some kind of non-fiction book.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a lot of writers. It's a huge
So it's
tradition.
just interesting.
Mhm.
It's just yeah. My personal view is that because the culture is so um, respectful of the sagas and the old Eddas and things that go back 1,000 years almost.
Yeah,
That may and the fact that the language hasn't really changed that much that people can still read those
yeah,
and that you feel a real affinity with the people that first arrived in Iceland all those years ago. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's a huge part of like just the car. I don't know, like who we are as Icelanders. It's like this written word.
exactly, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's explore a bit more about you, the person, the author behind the novels. So, what drew you to psychological suspense as a vehicle for your stories, rather than say traditional police procedural work?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing police procedurals, but I think I do it in a kind of also psychological way. I think it's a huge part of also the Elma series. And even though I did I have been enjoying like writing about police work. I think it's very interesting. It's become very technical. There's a lot of forensics, which I'm kind of like interested in as well.
Yeah.
But what I love the most is just exploring people and the reasons behind what they do, how they are. And I think it has always been like essential to my stories. It's not about like the how, it's about the why. It's much more about the why. But with psychological thrillers, I think also when you begin writing as a new writer, you're kind of not very confident. You not don't know what you're doing, and I think it's kind of nice to have the framework that is within the detective story. You know, you have kind of like this detective that drives on the story, and you kind of use it as a tool to get to the next chapter. You have someone that is like very has to investigate the crime. But I think as I became more confident in what I'm doing, I think that I became more confident to write stories that don't rely on this kind of structure, you know, that is the detective story. And I kind of love that with psychological thrillers, you have so much freedom to do what you want to do within the story, with the characters.
So,
And that's what I love to write about, like this very complex, like very kind of dark characters. Uh,
I was wondering whether kind of you'd studied psychology at all when you were younger, or maybe
yeah.
it's something you're teaching yourself now, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very interested in this, but I think also I mean I studied sociology in university,
Okay.
and I also took some criminology courses. And even though it wasn't like intentional to prep myself for writing crime fiction, it has helped a lot.
Of
So
course, of course.
yeah, I do still go to those books and read about all kinds of yeah reasons behind crimes, and yeah, it's what I've
It's good.
always been interested in. And
Yeah,
I kind of, I also my favorite books are usually with characters that I don't necessarily like. I mean, I don't need to read about likable characters. I kind of like them to be interesting, and you kind of have to have compassion for them. But yeah, I kind of like the unlikable characters, the
yeah.
ones that are unreliable, you know?
They say the villains are the more interesting characters, don't they? So rather
Yeah,
than the heroes.
yeah. And I mean, I think it's kind of also like this Nordic North thing. You usually have these don't have these heroes that some other fiction has. You have these very anti-heroes kind of.
Yes,
I think
or,
that's the
or more
appeal.
more complicated, maybe. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's the one of the appeal because I think most of us aren't heroes, you know?
Well, there's often many sides to each of us, aren't there? So
I mean, definitely. I think, of course, everyone has good and bad in them, and all kinds of complexities. And I think writing characters that you kind of relate to makes the story more appealing.
that's great. So you've built an international readership around the Forbidden Iceland series. So what made you want to step away from that for this book and write a standalone novel like Home Before Dark?
Um, I think because I wanted to explore something new. I wanted to try to write something that wasn't like didn't have that detective angle. I wanted to have that freedom to do what I wanted to do with my characters. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't really kill off your detective, your main character.
No, no. Well, that's true. That's a restriction.
Kind of ruins the next in the series. But I wanted to also like because yeah, I wanted to write a story without it being a police story, you know. I wanted to do something very different. And I think I'm very I kind of I don't see myself as one of the authors that can write, I don't know, 20 books in the same series. I
No, no,
think I always have that like I always want to do something new. I I can't linger on something for a long time. So I felt that I was kind of done with Elma for now.
Right.
Yeah, and wanted to explore something new.
It's interesting how in this particular novel the police are very much in the background, aren't they? So, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, it's about the people. It's not about the investigation, although Marcy, of course, goes to like investigate on her by herself.
that's right. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it is very complex in that way.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
I mean, I loved writing it because also she's not very reliable. She wouldn't make a great detective, I think, but she's
well,
determined.
yeah, but on the other hand, she does find out an awful lot of things, doesn't she? So it's kind of, I mean, she gets there in the end, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you have a detective, they kind of have to follow the rules,
Yeah.
even though they don't always do that, but they have to be well, at least pretend to follow the rules. But there you have someone who's very invested in finding out what happened and
Yeah.
doesn't care how she does it or what rules she
Well,
have
no,
to
that's right. And
protect.
I imagine at a crime scene, maybe a murder scene or whatever, normally, the police have to, as you say, follow certain principles. They can't mess with
Yeah.
they can't, tamper with the evidence or anything like that. So, but with this structure, you can do. I'm not suggesting you did that, but if you wanted to, you could do that if you wanted to. So,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can go through everything that the police can't really do because of her, principles or something. But yeah, I think I also loved just reading and writing about Marcy because she's so. I think she's very complex and kind
yes,
of damaged and kind of she's so affected by what happened. She's
yeah,
like struggling with her guilt and her everything that's happening around her. So, well, I do hope that readers kind of feel for her, even though they.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't. I think they. Well, I certainly did. I mean, I
Yeah,
was kind of rooting for her. Yeah, it's.
yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, well, we'll come to this later on, but all of the characters are very complex and very, have multiple direct dimensions, don't they? So it's
yeah, and I mean, I've included in this story also. I wanted to, even though it's not like a huge part, the story isn't about that, but it's one of the background. I don't know how to say this, but one of the reason behind the crime is like a historical event here in Iceland.
okay.
Yeah, I wanted to write about how kind of like that kind of trauma can shape generations. And I think, yeah, you see it in one of the characters, how it has affected not just her life, but the life of her family and her daughters.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. No, I mean, I think that's true of several of the characters actually. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's
definitely.
had a big impact on lots of people, hasn't it? So
Yeah, and I think it's like a theme I keep coming back to, like how past events kind of shape you, and even for generations. I think it's.
well,
I,
that's. I mean, I guess that's one of the beauties of writing about, things in a psychological way, because you can say that something happens, and then the whole basis of a good story is that you're putting certain characters into a situation, and
Mhm.
then you're seeing how they react, aren't you? So it's kind of it's 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 like that you're dropping a stone into a pond, and then
Exactly.
you're seeing how all the ripples kind of flow from when you drop the pebble into the water.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. I mean, and I think it's a kind of a very uh, realistic like way of how it happens in real life. I think it really is something that has like these, what do you say, replicant effects or
But
yeah,
the ripple effects, just
yeah, 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 sorry.
they create waves,
Yeah, yeah.
and the waves kind of
Mhm.
dissipate, don't they? And they carry on for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
So that I mean, going back to the novel, the atmosphere has got loads of tension. There's loads of memories that may or may not be true. There's the weight of family secrets. What was the emotional seed that gave rise to this particular story? Maybe it was that true story that you're mentioning. Maybe you got inspiration from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely what I kind of it's the reason for the setting and for I wanted to create it's kind of like creates the atmosphere for the book. So it's about this thing that happened here in Iceland in the Second World War. We had, of course, like yeah, there were soldiers from the US and the UK
Right.
that came here.
Okay.
And there was like a huge problem in Iceland how they were interacting with young girls, and the young girls were
Yes.
seeking them out and having relationships with them, and
Yeah.
this was like hugely frowned upon in Iceland. It's like everyone thought it was
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, everyone thought it was like not okay. So the police actually there was like a special detective sent just to watch them, like spy on the girls. And
Wow.
they were taken from their homes and sent off to the countryside to Kleppjárnsreykir, where my story happens. And in Kleppjárnsreykir, where there's a school now, the girls were kept there for a year, even as young as 13 or 14 years old,
That's interesting. Yeah.
and they were treated very badly. And it kind of it wasn't and that wasn't even the worst part. I think the worst part was that their reputation was totally ruined. Like they were always seen as these situation girls, even though they were just like teenagers, like having a crush on a boy or something, you know? It's like,
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't even discussed until very recently. But then had lived for 60 years with that huge stamp on them, on for being like situation girls. Um,
So it's
and then,
interesting because that happens in lots of other countries. I mean, like
yeah,
there's, in the UK, we had, we had Americans who were stationed in the UK, and
yeah,
there was lots of interaction between British girls and Americans, but we didn't have that same kind of crackdown.
no,
So
no,
that's maybe the thing that was a bit different about the situation in Iceland, perhaps.
yeah, and it shows how like we were kind of in our bubble. I mean, it's just nice Icelandic girls. They're not supposed to be with some Americans or the Brits, you know. It was very not accepted in the culture, you know.
No, no, no. I understand. Yeah, maybe religious reasons as well. Perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, and just like some kind of because it's foreigners. I mean, it's like yeah, kind of shows how this society was kind of not multicultural. It was very
Yeah, and also the position of Iceland in the Second World War as a kind of
Mhm.
staging post for, the North Atlantic ships that were delivering goods to the UK for the war effort. It was almost like I think in a sense Iceland had in quote marks a good war because you were trading with the Americans and the Brits for the things, almost like a stopping point, a resting
yeah,
point.
yeah, and we got
Yeah.
they like I think we still have like we do still have like a defense agreement with them after that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was like these girls, they even like I said, all down to 14 years old, they were sent to medical examinations, like medical inspections to
Wow.
see if they still had their virginity. So
Oh
it was
wow. That must have been quite traumatic
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's on its own base. Yeah, wow. Okay.
So even though the story doesn't, I felt that it wasn't really my place to tell that story. The
No.
story is kind of built up on that
Well, it's an integral
those events.
part, but it's not the driving force necessarily.
No, but it
It's
has an
it's
effect.
yes,
Yeah.
of course. It's like
Mhm.
it's one of the reasons why the story happens, but
Mhm.
it's kind of
Yeah.
I don't
It's
want
kind
to
of
get
in the background.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the Icelandic landscape is almost a character in itself. It's bleak, it's mysterious, it's isolating. So, how important is landscape and environment to the stories that you tell?
It certainly like creates an atmosphere. I think it's like but you do have to balance it. I mean, I don't want it to be like I'm writing a tourist brochure, you know, but I think it's like
That's true. Yeah.
it's I didn't really think about it first when I started writing, but I think it is actually important, especially for like people outside of Iceland that are reading the books, because you kind of want to be transferred into that atmosphere and into that culture. But I do hope that it comes kind of naturally.
Yes.
But of course, in like Home Before Dark, it's a huge part of the story because it happens in this. It's actually a fictional town, but the location and the setting is very real. It's in Borgarfjörður, which is like a fjord in where you have all the Sturlunga sagas and the geothermal baths and
Yes.
stuff like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. That's part of the
Yeah,
story as well, isn't it? Because they at one point some characters go off
yeah.
and swim in the hot stream, don't they? So
I mean, it's yeah. We actually we do have also like a hot lake close to Akranes where we used to go like as teenagers during the evenings and swim. So I guess the atmosphere does shine through just because it's like a part of
well, it's
who I
part of
am. And
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. So
totally, yeah, yeah.
I do hope that it creates this atmosphere. And I think it's like one of the things that also shapes most of my stories is like the weather. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a huge part of Icelanders talking about the weather, obsessing about the weather. I think we have like I don't know how many names for snow and
Oh,
rain,
that's interesting.
wind, and everything like that.
Maybe not as many as the Eskimos, but
No, no.
I think they've
But
got
like,
something like 30 or 40 different
yeah,
words for the
maybe for wind and rain we have more words. I think.
yeah, maybe.
Yes, the weather is always bad, and of course, like I think it's a huge part of the culture. Also, just how dark the winters get and
Yes.
how light the summers are.
And
So
also the
maybe,
number of hours. I mean, it must do something to the psyche if in the winter, for example, you only have a couple of hours of sunshine,
yeah,
and then
yeah, and we even have like a term for like a depression that follows, like a short day depression. It's like a real problem here in Iceland.
yes, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but like I'm a huge introvert, so I kind of like it.
well, we had these lamps. I'm sure you've got them as well for this. What's it called? SAD.
Yeah, no,
It's
yeah,
seasonal affective disorder, I think it is.
I have it for my
And you have
kids.
like a blue lamp, and you put this on, and it's supposed to make you feel better. So
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it, but I haven't used it. But I have this alarm for my teenager, so he can wake up in daylight. So it
okay.
helps. Yes, but I kind of find that I enjoy, especially writing crime books during that time of year. It's
I think it kind of it creates an atmosphere. I mean, if you think of Victorian London, for example, then the whole Jack the Ripper thing, you immediately think of a particular kind of environment, don't you? So it's
yeah,
I guess it's a similar kind of thing. I mean, with Iceland, well, the novels that I've read, there's a certain pace,
definitely.
that sort of a slowness of things taking their time,
Yeah,
perhaps because if you're in a small community in Iceland, then maybe things don't happen particularly quickly. So
yeah, definitely.
it kind of slows things down a bit, perhaps.
I think so. I think it has to do like also with the tone, and like I said, even it's something that I'm analyzing after I write the books. But
Sure.
I think in the winter it gets you in a certain kind of mood, and I think the pacing is kind of like a slow burn, and it's kind of a melancholic feeling, you know. It's
Yeah.
kind of like this dredge over everything. Uh,
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it's even sort of imperceptible. It's you're not even aware that you're writing like that. Maybe because it's coming from
Oh,
you. So it's
yeah.
part of who you are as an Icelandic person, I suppose, as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I think being an Icelander, I think it's often easier for someone that is not too. see how your writing is different from everything else.
Yeah, I guess
I
so. But
think it's, I
that's
think it's,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
it gives you a voice, doesn't it? So which is
yeah,
different from
well,
people.
yeah, I hope so. But I mean, we do have writers like Lilja Sigurðardóttir who has like a faster pace, and so yeah, I think it's something that comes quite naturally, and yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's like when I started writing, everything I did was just like kind of just came kind of naturally, but afterwards you start to analyze it and see how it's shaped by everything
Well,
that
I
has.
guess once you've written something, I guess there's a different relationship between you and the book because you've finished it. But when you're in the middle of it, I guess it's a
Yeah.
your relationship to the book is a bit different. You know, you're creating something, whereas afterwards you're reflecting back on it, aren't you?
Mhm. Yeah. And I kind of I've written all my books without like planning anything beforehand.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
So I don't even know what I'm writing while I'm writing it. So
if I was writing a novel, I think I'd find that quite scary.
yeah, and it was, and that's why I was saying like when I wrote my first book, I wasn't as confident as a writer as I am now. So it was nice to have that structure that is
Right.
within the detective story. And I don't want to
Yes.
say it like a, some people say it's like a, what's it called? Like a, making it sound like easier because it's
No, no, no,
has
no.
the
But
detective.
if you're writing genre fiction, then there is a certain expectation about what happens in a particular
Yeah, yeah.
order, perhaps, you know. So maybe if you're writing that kind of book, then it's there are certain rules, maybe.
Yeah, and you have just like someone to drive the story, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But I feel like now that I'm more confident and I kind of have started to learn to trust the process, you know? I know that even though I don't know where I'm going, I know that I will get to the end eventually. I used to be not so sure of that.
Do you know roughly where you're going, or is it kind of a surprise to you at the end? You know,
I mean, I do have sometimes it's like, it's been very different with each book, but I do usually have an idea about either the setting, the plot, the character, or like the murder. Um,
yeah. I imagine you must know at least who your murderer is, I suppose, you know.
no, no, I never know that actually.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I never know who the murderer is. I think I kind of like that. I know usually who the victim is. Important, at least in the detective stories. Um, but I usually give myself like I think it's also good because if I don't know where I'm going, the
Oh,
reader
it keeps it
probably won't
yeah,
know it either.
keeps
So
it interesting to you, and I guess it keeps everybody guessing. If you don't know,
yeah,
then how can anybody else know? So
exactly. And I do keep like a lot of options open. So I do
yes,
usually have like I don't know, a lot of reasons for what happened and why and who could have been the culprit. But in the end, I usually find out who is the most likely.
yeah, I mean it's in that sense it's similar to kind of Agatha Christie type thing because it's almost anybody, any of your characters in Home Before Dark could have been the murderer.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it keeps it so it's not predictable, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
at least I hope so. Uh,
Okay, so the book Home Before Dark it spans two timelines, 1967 and 1977. So how did you manage the kind of the narrative and the emotional layering of things between the past and the present without giving too much away? That must have been tough.
yeah, and like I said, it's while I'm writing these two timelines, and like I said, I don't know exactly where I'm going with them. It's kind of a lot of work in the end when I do know the story. It's kind of a puzzle, you know. I kind of have to, but I do enjoy that part of writing to kind of structure the story and make sure that all the information comes out at the time I want it to come out, and the pacing is good. So it's a kind of like I said, it's kind of a puzzle between when you want to say things, when you want. I have these two perspectives from Marcy and Stina, so it kind of has to be very well knit, or yeah,
Yes, no,
you know
yes.
what I mean? Yeah,
I mean,
tuned together.
it's tricky, but I mean, yeah, it's amazing to me that you were just discovering that as you were going along. It seems like the kind of thing that you'd need to plot out quite carefully, but it's kind
Yeah.
of you're
But it's
obviously very talented when it comes to just going with the flow, you know?
yeah, but it helps also that like when I get stuck at one place, I can just go to the next place, and then that sparks something for the
Right.
other story, you know? So
Okay.
it's
And then you, I guess you go through a process of revising, you know, in like
yeah, yeah, and weaving it all
you write your
together.
first draft very quickly, and then you go back and you can change things, can't you? I suppose.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I sometimes I wish I could just plan everything and write it like I planned it. Because it's a lot of, I think it's a lot more work when you don't plan anything, and then it's a question about taking some stuff out, and even I mean, I relate a lot to what Stephen King says about killing your darlings. You kind of sometimes write a very nice chapter, you think, and then it doesn't serve any
Doesn't
purpose
fit.
for the story, so you kind of have to throw it out.
That's right. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess if you go back in your editing, then
Hmm.
you have to make sure that the kind of projections and the forecasting and whatever, that everything matches up. So you're not creating like a complete red herring that's completely irrelevant. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
everything has to
exactly.
be tied into
Hmm.
the story, you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's interesting.
definitely. No, it's a lot of work, and I think I write like my books are usually about 90,000 words or something. But
Okay.
I think for that book I write about half as more. Yeah, like 150,000 words, and
Wow.
then
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, I also feel like I do when I get stuck, I do write a lot of side stories about the characters just to give me a clearer picture of them, even
Yes.
even stuff that I know that won't matter, but I think it gives me like a ideas and like a builds them better as as a character.
Yeah. It reminds me of an acting technique where in a play,
Mm.
a director might get the individual characters to be interviewed under a with a spotlight, and they have to have a conversation with other cast members or the director about what's actually going on from their point of view. So I guess that's a similar kind of thing that you're doing there. So you know, it's a
Yeah, I think so, and I think it does help a lot. And
yes,
sometimes I've ended up including some of it in the story, but I want the characters to be, very real, and it's a question of kind of showing, not telling. So it's like
that's
if you
right, and that
create these events where they react in a certain way, you kind of get a feeling better of how
that's
they
right.
are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. You can't reveal things too quickly to the reader that the characters don't know.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, so talking about Marcy, I mean, she's clearly a really important character in the book. She's unreliable in ways that are sort of heartbreaking and terrifying at the same time. So, how do you balance the psychology of a character like Marcy? Because it must be quite difficult to get the balance right there.
Um, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed, uh, I enjoyed writing about her because I think, yeah, I don't know. I think she's like very different to her sister. They are kind of the complete opposites. Um, so I think that, yeah, I don't know.
You don't know. That's fine. That's fine. We've got plenty.
Yeah, but she was like from the beginning. She was actually very like clear to me how she was, and it's I guess it's I think she's not that. I mean, she's kind of a dark person. She's kind of damaged. You
No,
can see
I
that
think
very clearly.
it's interesting to me how you reveal, over time. You don't you don't share everything about her as a character until quite near the end of the novel. So it's kind of it's
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
how we are as the readers we're discovering more about Marcy as the novel goes on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like what I wanted to do because she's part of the mystery, isn't she?
Yeah,
She's like if you should trust her or not, and if she like what does she know that she doesn't know that she know, you know? It's like
that's right. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like I mean, you've got all these other sort of documents and diaries and
mm,
books and photographs and things that evolve, don't they? That you might bring them into the story, but they don't really reveal their meaning until later on. So it's kind of that's very skillful writing. Yeah. Okay, so there's a kind of dreamlike quality to the whole novel, which I guess comes from largely from Marcy's perspective, but there are other characters as well who share this kind of quality. So memories are blurry, sleep is difficult to, lots of people have got insomnia. What kind of role do dreams and the subconscious play in the way that you write, or is it just this particular novel that you're exploring those themes?
no, I think I actually wanted to write about something that is very also cultural for Icelanders. I think for a long time people here have been like they do be, I mean we don't all believe in elves and stuff like that, but we do have this. I think it's very rich in the culture that we do believe in all kinds of um, supernatural things, if you may. I'm not sure what the right English word for it is, but like when you see a black cat or
Oh, so superstitions.
yeah, superstitions, exactly. So I think I wanted to write about a lot of that, and also it's also the dreams. You know, it's like a lot of dreams have meaning. You have uh, these black well ravens. They mean death, and it's always been like very like I think Icelanders are very superstitious, but yeah, I think that what was the question again?
Well, just this idea that dreams are an important image. See,
Yeah,
you
I also wanted to create a kind of atmosphere with it, and I kind of wanted to take it do it in an original way though, because I think that Marcy she isn't seeing ravens, she sees hens in her dreams.
that's true. I mean, and also that so there's a humor there as well.
Yeah, and
But
also because her parents they own this chicken farm, and there was actually like a lot of discussion in recent years about how badly these chickens were treated.
right,
So
okay,
it
that's
kind
interesting.
of
Yeah,
yeah, it kind of hunts Marcy as well, and kind of makes you maybe have this perception about her parents because
yes,
yeah, you can you really trust them if they treat their animals so badly?
yeah, that's right. That's one of the subtle reasons why you might see her parents as
Hmm.
as, as more um as less sympathetic perhaps as characters.
And I mean, in the book, I don't think that the dreams are really premonition. I mean, it's not a supernatural thriller at all.
But I
It,
think it kind of contributes to the whole atmosphere of the thing. If
yeah,
there's a certain it's difficult to dreams are difficult to interpret, and maybe the weather is difficult to if it's misty or it's snowing or whatever, you can't see clearly through the
no,
weather
no.
either, can you? So maybe there's a parallel there between the weather and the idea of a dream.
Yeah. And I mean, I was actually when I was writing this book, I was very interested in sleep and like the lack of sleep. I had just read this book, what's it called? Like Why We Sleep or something.
Yeah,
It was very popular, and it was like about the importance of sleep and how dreams are shaped. And I know, well, dreams usually they don't tell you anything except
Right.
about what's in your subconsciousness.
And
So
there's a whole theory around lucid dreaming, isn't there? This idea that in your dreams you might actually, I mean, some people believe that you actually, in your lucid dreaming are actually living a different life
yeah, yeah.
in a different dimension. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting how all of that, you know, I'm not suggesting that's what's happening here, but it's kind of interesting.
But also I wanted also to I had this idea about a story about like memory, because I think memory is one of the most interesting things about
Yes.
being a human, because I think most people think that they have a good memory of like how things were and what happened. But I think studies have shown that your memory is actually very fragile, and like you can't really
Yes.
trust it, because what you might think happened is just how you have shaped it through the years. And I know it sounds kind of like you think you don't do it. You think you have a very clear idea of what happened. Uh, but there was actually I watched this documentary about memory, and because most people can say where they were when something like huge happened. So people were asked where they were when they heard about 9/11,
Yes.
and people were able to like say, yeah, I was there, I was with my husband, we were watching in a room, something like that. And then 10 years later, the same scientists asked the same people the same question, and they got very different answers.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Yeah.
they didn't even realize that through the years the memory of where they were at that time had changed. And
That's
I thought that was very interesting. And especially when you take someone and you think about your childhood, I mean, you have a very clear idea of how your, I don't know. I don't know if you have a clear idea though, but I think you have a lot of memories from your childhood uh, that aren't real. I think that you have kind of
right.
shaped them, and
I, I mean, I think that there are certain things. I mean, I was interested in this when you might remember there was a case where one of the Supreme Court judges was accused of um, raping this
Mm,
academic, and there was and she was put on the stand, and they were accusing her of not remembering things properly. And I think what made her testimony quite compelling is that she wasn't remembering everything, but she was remembering certain details. And
oh,
I think within these memories and not remembering, there are certain things that stand out and are
yeah.
very clear, and other things which you don't remember very well at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. And I think it's also just a matter of how you experience some things. It might be a complete different experience from someone else, even though it's the same event. Uh,
Yes.
and I've always had very vivid dreams ever since I was a kid.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
and yeah, and even though they're like not important at all, it's like not giving me any idea about the future or something, but they are very vivid. So I have often, when I was a kid, I used to come like mix sometimes things together. I believed something happened that actually happened in a dream. So it was,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. So I had like these memories just about something very not important, about something my mom said or my mom did or my friends, did or something. But I remembered it very clearly, but then, yeah, found out later that it was never happened, you
Or
know?
you've incorporated somebody else's memory into your memory. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know. And I think also because, I mean, I read a lot of books, and sometimes I felt that stuff that happened in books had happened to me. I don't know. Maybe I sound kind of crazy, but
Maybe it did
maybe I'm kind
in
of
some
like
weird way.
masking.
If you're reading something in a book, then I guess you are experiencing it because
Yeah,
you're imagining it, aren't you? So
yeah. And I mean, you have such a good of an imagination when you're a kid. So I
that's
think
true.
it's very easy to get caught up in your imagination as a kid.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
that's
think I
interesting.
think that was like that's Marcy kind of. I wanted her to be this kind of very fragile, well, not fragile, but like this very some kind of version of this me that kind of doesn't really have a clear idea of what really happened and what
Right.
not.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. It's an interesting way of looking at her journey. Yeah, yeah. So do you see Home Before Dark as a whodunit, a psychological portrait, or something else completely? Do you know?
I mean, I think it's both. It's, of course, Marcy is investigating something, but it's a lot about the psychological issues. So I think it's kind of a mix. It's because when you have a psychological thriller, it's often like from a different standpoint. You have like something that hasn't happened yet, and then you have some events leading up to it. But in this book, something has happened. So she is investigating, kind of like a police procedural, but
Yeah,
she like from a very different point of view. And then you also have something happening, you know, it's something that is also leading up to something, you know. So I think it's definitely a mix of both.
no, it's interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
and there's this motif of sisterhood and guilt going through the story. So what does that emotional landscape open up for you when you're telling the story? I mean, you know,
Mm.
the relationship between the two sisters, you know.
Yeah, I mean, she's like I said, they are like complete opposites, and there are just 2 years between them. So I think Marcy was kind of like the more like Stina was very this happy, glad, very popular girl, while Marcy was kind of an introvert and much darker than her sister.
Yeah,
So she lived in her shadow even when they were kids. She kind of looked up to her big sister. And then when her sister goes missing, she's kind of has this idea that it should have been her, of course. Yeah, she has a lot of guilt because of it. And I think that because she is so much like, yeah, she's such a different person, much more reserved, that I think she's constantly thinking that she
yeah,
was the one that was supposed to go, you know?
yeah. Did you find it difficult or challenging to write about a protagonist who didn't really trust her own mind or her own judgment? You know, that's um, you know, a kind of you know, she's not at many points she's not really sure of herself, is she? So it's kind of
No, yeah, I kind of, I did love to write about uh, that because I think most of us aren't very confident in those years, and I think I kind of enjoyed writing about this part of what it is to be like a teenager. Is well, she's a teenager in the beginning, but she's like 20 something when the story takes place. And I think that yeah, Marcy is very complex, but I think she's also relatable because at least for me, I mean, it's like a lot of insecurities and like these during these years that have extra how do you say that have become very much clearer because of what happened.
yes. I mean, it makes her feel very authentic. You know that she's a real person. You know, so
Yeah, I do hope so. And even though she's like this kind of, I don't know, not a very happy person, I think she's also she has also good qualities, even though she doesn't see them, you know?
no, I mean, so you've been praised by your sort of golden age meets Nordic noir style. So which writers, past or present, do you think inspire you the most and contribute to how you know, your writing style, perhaps?
Um, wow, I mean, when I was writing the detective stories, I was reading a lot of detective stories. I think you kind of get shaped by what you're reading. But today I kind of of contemporary writers. I kind of love Gillian Flynn, Lisa Jewell.
Yeah.
But I was also reading Rebecca by Daphne how do you say, Daphne du Maurier, which is kind of like a very atmospheric book. But I mean, it's one of the hardest question I get. I read a lot from a lot of different authors.
Yes, I think it's difficult to pinpoint because
Yeah.
you're learning from everybody, aren't you, I suppose?
Yeah, but I love it when the writing is like very good and like the prose is like kind of yeah, I think it's and that's what I think like Lisa Jewell and Gillian Flynn have. They have like this very good
Yes.
language, you know?
I can see that. I mean, in a book like Gone Girl, there's it's all about sort of unreliable.
Yeah, and I mean
Right.
it's a huge satire also. So it's like a it's like a kind of like taking something that is wrong with our society and maybe wrong with us as humans and kind of highlighting it and making it like making the story about it.
Yeah, and a lot of her characters and your characters too. I mean, you know that when you first meet a particular character, then they turn out to be very different from how you first meet them. You know, so
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, if you've read Gillian Flynn, I think like one of my favorite characters of her was not just Gone Girl, but in Sharp Objects, you have this very damaged protagonist. So yeah, I guess I have a thing for very
and for her,
damaged persons.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're interesting to write about, I guess.
Yeah, they are, and I think it's just I think we're all kind of damaged. It's just how it shines through and how we like
Yeah.
yeah how good we are at hiding it, you know.
So you've got, well, according to Wikipedia anyway, you have readers in 24 different languages. I don't know whether that's correct. You know,
Yeah, no, I think 24 languages. Yeah, it's
24, yeah. Well, so that's amazing. So what kind of reactions do you get from people overseas, you know, international readers, and how's that surprised you or moved you most, do you think?
wow. I've gotten so many reactions that surprised me. I mean, I feel it most when I go to France because the France have like these huge book festivals that are very well attended,
Right.
and and I've had some like amazing readers come up to me. Like one even wrote a book with a character with my name.
I really,
Like yeah, which was amazing, and I've had like so many lovely gifts and like also just messages and stuff like that. I think it's always so great and important to get feedback because being a writer is kind of a lonely job
yes,
and it's like different from all other art because well most other art like if you're a singer or I don't know yeah if you're a singer on stage you sing and then you get applause, you know.
yes,
But when you're a writer, it's always kind of weird to publish a book and then you just sit at home and you wait for reaction, you know?
yes, yes. That must be very scary.
It is, and it's like very stressful. So it's like going to festivals and meeting readers is always very satisfying because
Yes.
you
Yeah.
finally get some kind of feedback.
No, no, totally. That must be amazing feeling. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
especially like people from all over the world. I think I kind of can't comprehend it still that people from all over the world are reading books
No,
about
yeah, that's
Akranes or
that have started out in your head. Yeah, yeah. That's
yeah, it's very weird and most of the time I don't even yeah. I think if I would think about it too much when I'm writing a new book, it would kind of
no,
overwhelm
no,
me.
no.
But
You have to write.
yeah,
Well, your first reader is yourself, really. You know.
yeah, exactly. Hmm.
So, what do you hope readers will take with them when they finish home before dark? Sorry, I got the
Yeah.
bang.
I want them to feel very uncomfortable no, while reading the book. I kind of, yeah, I loved creating that atmosphere that kind of unsettles you and makes you kind of gives you that dreadful feeling.
Yeah,
But I still want there to be an ending where you feel like you close the book and you're satisfied with the ending. I
no,
kind of
yeah,
yeah. But I still at the same time I don't like. I'm not always fan of the American ending where everything ends like
yeah. It just
very
resolved.
beautifully. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't. I do like. I know that not all people do like it, but I do like these kind of endings that are a bit more complex.
well, I mean, when I finished the book, I couldn't help wondering what happened to the characters after 1977,
Yeah,
because the novel finishes, so long ago.
yeah.
And there are certain things that happen in the book which I wouldn't call them loose ends, but there are certain things that if you did want to revisit those characters, you could do, because there's certainly enough leeway
Yeah, definitely.
for things to develop, in later years, if you wanted to do that. I mean,
Mm.
you've given yourself some room if you wanted to explore that a bit
I
more.
mean, that was actually like my first idea when I started writing this book to write a story happening in the same house like decades later.
Yes.
Then you have this house which has like this history and
Well,
these
yeah, it's
events
almost
that
like
have taken place.
the house is another character, isn't it, really? So
Yeah. I mean, I do love houses as characters. I think one of like a lot of my favorite stories have like houses that are very kind of gothic houses,
yes.
with a huge history and yeah, I do love that. So I can imagine writing about something happening in that
Yeah,
house.
and because of some of the things that happen in that house,
Yeah,
you get
and I mean,
you get the feeling that the house might be haunted, or
definitely. I think if I would write about that house later, it would definitely have some haunting stories. I think it's like a perfect house for that.
yeah, totally.
hmm
So maybe you can give us a bit of a glimpse as to what you might be wanting to do next. I mean, are you going to go back to a kind of series, or do you like this idea of writing, standalone?
Yeah, I do love to write standalones. I feel like I kind of I'm in my element when I'm writing these kind of first person point of views because I
Yes,
can get very close to I can get inside the head of my characters. Uh,
yes,
so I just finished writing a new standalone. So it's about, like we were talking about earlier, I'm very interested in psychology. And it's actually about this guy that's a psychologist. And
okay,
he gets like a very troubled patient that has like a history of, well, her parents were murdered in a very brutal way. And she wasn't home. But there were always stories that because her father was supposed to have killed her mother and then himself. But this psychologist, he used to be very interested in this case when it came out. It was like 20, 30 years ago. And now he gets very excited because he gets that patient and now he gets to work with her head and see if she knows something more about what happened in that
oh,
home.
that's interesting.
He's been kind of obsessed with
Yes.
his case since he was like a young man. So
So I guess you're back exploring these ideas of
yeah,
memory,
I guess.
yeah. So you can
Yeah,
start to see some motifs in your work, that you're interested
yeah,
in certain things. Yeah, yeah. Wow.
definitely. hmm
Okay, well, we're coming towards the end, and thank you for being so generous with your time. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. I've just got the last couple of questions.
Yeah.
But whenever I do these interviews, I always like to, because one of the ways in which I celebrate Jolabokaflod within, the company that I have, which is designed to promote the tradition everywhere other than Iceland, because I think it's such an amazing tradition.
hmm
And what I have is an online catalog which is all about book recommendations. in the same way that the Bókafló is a printed catalogue of all the Icelandic titles that are published every year. And obviously, you can't do that in the English language because there are way too many books published every year. So I like to, have in my catalogue, it's a digital catalogue full of recommendations that people have given. So I'm kind of wondering if you were to, I mean, we've already mentioned a couple of authors. Is there a particular book that you would say is a favorite book that you'd like to recommend to people in the audience that isn't one that you've written yourself?
Yeah, by an Icelandic author, or
It could be anybody. Yeah, anybody you like.
I think I would have to say, like, talking about kind of ghost stories, haunted stories. Even though I'm like, I kind of like the realistic approach to crime fiction, but I do love one story that kind of has like this supernatural element to it, and that's by Yrsa Sigurðardóttir. It's called I Remember You,
Okay.
and it's like a very atmospheric story about this couple that goes to renovate a house on this isolated place, and then they start to experience some kind of haunting. So
Okay.
it's
Interesting.
like even though it's I know it's not everyone's thing to read about supernatural stuff, but this she manages to do it without it ever being like unrealistic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like the only book that I've been afraid to read, it's like
Interesting.
yeah, I wasn't I was living alone when I was reading it, and I was not okay at the night in the night going to sleep. I was like scared.
No, yeah, I had that
Yeah, I
feeling
do love.
once. Have you ever come across Susan Hill's book, The Woman in Black? That's very
Oh,
that's very scary.
yeah, I have to read that. I'm a huge fan actually of horror books and the horror story and the horror films. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been made into I think it was made into a film with Daniel
I've seen the
Radcliffe.
film. Yeah, I've seen the film. It's very good.
Yeah. Well, so why is that book so special to you? Is it a particular, do you just admire the writing, or does it speak to something within yourself?
I just remember the feeling when I was reading it for the first time. It was of course a Christmas present, and it was kind of huge here in Iceland because everyone was talking about it, like how it affected them, how they couldn't go to sleep, and it was because it was so uncomfortable. And I remember thinking like I wanted to write books that make people feel like that, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so
Yeah,
maybe
because
you want people to feel a bit frightened, maybe.
I do. I want them to feel kind of uncomfortable. I don't know if it makes me bad, but I do want them
No,
to
no, no, no. I
be
mean,
affected by the story, you know?
sure. So is there, obviously we're here to talk about Home Before Dark, but is there anything else as well as Home Before Dark that you'd like to promote, or is it, purely you want to stick to this particular book? Because I know you've written many other books as well. So
Yeah, I mean, of course, I want to promote all my books. No, but I mean, I think the Alma series, it has been very successful, and I think it's a good, I think it's a psychological detective series.
right.
But I think though that Home Before Dark is my favorite book I've
Oh,
written.
that's high praise. So
Uh,
Ava, thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. And I hope everybody that's watching this, both now and in the future, has got as much out of this as I have. And wishing you every success for the new publication of Home Before Dark in the English language. And the publication date is coming up very soon, and you can pre-order it now if you'd like to. And maybe by the time you're watching this video or the clips from this video, it'll already be published. So go out and buy the book, and keep Ava in a position where she can write more and more books for a long time to come. So Ava, thank you very much, and I will stop the recording. So.